Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. It is good to be home, back at the desk. We've been away from the desk for a little bit. If you want to know why I've been away and what we're going to be getting up to in the next month or so, which I didn't mention in this video, but obviously it's spooky season. Happy spooky season, everybody. It's my favorite time of the year. So we'll definitely have some Spooktober stuff coming. I'm going to try to get back on top of that this year. And then if you want to know what else could be coming and where I've been the last month and a half, because I haven't really been around too much, check out this video where I talk about working the Olympics and going to fish and just having a hell of a 2-month run. But yeah, now we are back. We're here in the studio, and there are some movies that I did not get the chance to talk about because the Olympics owned my life for the majority of that 2 months. And the first one is one of my favorite movies of the entire year. I didn't know anything about this movie going into it. I saw a Twitter ad that had a screening listed at Lincoln Square with a Q&A with the writer, director J.T. Mollner, lead actor Willa Fitzgerald, and cinematographer and producer Giovanni Ribisi. And between that and the poster, which is, it just pops so much, I was like, ooh, I want to see what this is about. Then there were tickets available, so I said, screw it. I'm not going to watch a trailer. I'm not going to read anything. I'm going completely blind. And let me tell you, going in completely blind to this movie is the best way to do it. Like, if you don't know anything about this film, you haven't heard of this film, don't look into it. Heck, don't even watch this review. Stop it here. Go see the movie. Then come back and watch this review. Yes, I'm going to keep it spoiler free, but like I said, I think going completely blind into this one really, really benefits the audience members that do. What are we talking about? I mean, pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in spoiler free into Strange Darling, and good golly me, what JT Mollner put together and pulled off with this movie. It is like, I think one of my favorite things about filmmaking and about movies is how often a movie can give you the feeling of magic, you know, and what you're watching just feels like a magic trick. And there are a few magic tricks this year in the movie realm that will be utilized or played that are bigger than what JT Mollner pulls off with this movie. This was something I didn't see coming. It had me all over the place. Like, it's a movie that purposely puts the audience in a mode where you are off balance from go. And you are just trying to find your footing the whole movie. And when you finally do find your footing and everything clicks in, like, your jaw just drops and you're like, wow, what did I just see? It's such a cool movie. The most that I will say about it is the synopsis that exists on IMDb, which states, nothing is what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. And that in and of itself might even be giving away too much, man, because I didn't even know that much going into it. But what Mollner does here is, in the setup, he mild spoilers, but when the movie opens with text and mentions that there was a serial killer that I want to say it was like between 2013 and 2016 was doing all sorts of crazy kills. And I believe this is completely fiction. I don't think this is an actual serial killer. I wasn't able to find anything about this serial killer. But the concept of, like, this time period is when it's taking place. This person's been wreaking havoc, and we're right at the end. Like, the last thing they do before they get caught. And then you get this, like, opening that involves Willa Fitzgerald that puts the audience members right into the mayhem right away. Like, you are thrown into, what am I watching? What am I looking at? And then it kind of does this thing where you get to the spot and it kind of puts up Strange Darling, and it says a thriller told in 6 chapters, which immediately got me tickled because, being a huge Tarantino fan, I love when he does chapter storytelling. It allows, I think, the writer and the director so much freedom because you can structure the movie in a way where the chaptering helps in telling the story. But the thing I love about Strange Darling is why there are tons of Tarantino vibes throughout the film. A lot of moments with the dialogue, the usage of characters, where characters enter the movie, how they enter, how they talk. I would bet, if I had a chance to talk to JT Mollner and I asked him, is Quentin Tarantino a general inspiration for you, but was he an inspiration anyway for this movie? I feel like the answer would be yes, because there were just so many moments throughout the course of the movie where I was just like, that feels very Tarantino-esque. And in a movie that's being put together in this way, it feels appropriate to kind of have things that feel Tarantino-esque, because at least for me, in the world of movies, nobody does chaptering better than Tarantino. But JT Mollner, he found a way to use the chaptering that was so beneficial for his movie. And the mild spoiler I will say around the chaptering is that the movie is told out of order. And it's told out of order on purpose. And like I said, I think chaptering in general can free a director or a writer to do or try different things, because you know you're going to be able to close a scene and just go to a new one. You don't have to find a seamless transition, although Mollner has some wonderful transitions in this movie, specifically on the opening. Like the opening title cards are like all in red. And and then there's like a moment where you're going into, I think, the third chapter, not chapter 3, but the third chapter we see it in the movie. And it changes color in the background, because as it fades off, that color like mirrors or mimics the truck that you see pulling into a parking spot, and it's just so freaking cool. And like there are things like that throughout the whole movie, but in the freeing that the chaptering can allow you to do, shuffling the chapters around can also free up a writer director in a lot more ways. And Mollner certainly uses that function to his advantage the whole film. He is able to throw the audience right into these unbelievably suspenseful, edge of your seat, like just huge thriller wins. And when you see the whole movie and you think about the chronological order, while those moments would still play thrilling, I don't know if they would play as thrilling as getting to see them out of context. And it's just so much fun to have a movie open and throw you right into it. And you're like, oh shit, what did we just get into? And Mollner's able to do that periodically throughout the movie, where you're able to throw us into that and then jump back or jump forwards and put us in a situation or a scenario where we're going to be more dialogue driven. And the dialogue allows to build out these characters in ways that gives Mollner the opportunity to play with so many different thematical elements. And I can't even say all the different thematical elements that Mollner plays with, because it would be spoilery. But like, there is a one night stand in this movie, as the synopsis mentions, and there is a little bit of a love story. And to see a love story mixed into a serial killer's killing spree is fascinating on its own. But because of the way that Mollner structures it, you're really able to take on this thing where you're just talking about the like, that's the other thing. It's like this action and these moments of suspense can be so thrilling, but then the dialogue can give you so much. And it's not just character building, but it's also this thematical world building and what he's telling in the story. And it's cool to see the characters talk about thematical elements while also seeing what those thematical elements are doing in the movie in and of itself. And all of that stuff is just, like I said, it's a giant magic trick from Mollner, and I think he really utilizes the structure to amplify everything that he's doing in the story, and it allows him to have twists and turns that you can't see coming because everything is jumbled. But the other thing that's really cool with jumbling the story is there are moments where we're seeing things that happen technically in the future of the story. So then when we go back, you're sitting there going, how did we get to this thing? How did this thing that I'm seeing now happen? And as you're going through those moments, how he's able to play with your emotions and the things that you're thinking about, and how he can make you ask other questions by showing different things that are going to play later on. Like, all of it just worked really, really well. And I am someone who loves a story that plays chronologically. And a lot of times you see movies that play out of chronological order and you go, man, that made my head spin. And like, if you would have just told the story chronologically, I think it would have played better. But Mollner figured out how to do it in a way where not telling it in order really amplifies the movie. And I think if you told it chronologically, it wouldn't work as well as it does out of order. Now, that being said, that's not all that JT Mollner's got to offer. Like I said, I do think he crafts a phenomenal thriller here, and those thrilling sequences are massive. But he also creates a movie that spotlights his two lead actors. And one of the other things that shuffling the movie around with, it gives you 3 chapters to open the movie where it's just these two before any other characters are on screen. And Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner are just absolutely phenomenal the whole movie. And I just love that Mollner continually puts them in positions to show off and to do things that work in so many different ways. And I mean, when you look at what Willa Fitzgerald is doing, like she is becoming a modern day Scream queen without a doubt. Obviously, she comes from the Scream television show that was on MTV, and she's popped up in several horror movies since then. And anytime she's on screen, she's really good. But this movie allowed her to do so many things that I've never seen her do. And she is just spectacular across the board. I mean, the way that she is able to captivate you or Gallner's character, how she sees the world, how she talks about the world, and the sparks and the electricity and chemistry that she has with Gallner on screen. It just creates such a fascinating story and fascinating world to live in. And her performance, I think, is also elevated by the way in which Mollner tells this story. And like I said, it just gives her so many opportunities where she's able to do things with her facial expressions or just her general like digesting of fear or terror or just what's going on in any situation and how she can have some of these responses come back. Like one of the things I really dig about the script that Mollner puts together is that while we do have these unbelievable suspenseful thrilling moments and we have these really wonderful character moments, there's also this wonderful dark humor baked in. Something else that gave me kind of that Tarantino vibe where you get a laugh sometimes that you don't expect, not because it's built to be a laugh, but it's just the way it's delivered. Even though it's delivered normally, in that moment, you're just like, you can't help it. And in a thriller, you need those moments to break. And Fitzgerald is excellent at that, but so is Gallner. And Gallner is one of those guys where, like, I was reading an article the other day, he is a modern day Scream king, where he got his start in horror. You go all the way back to like The Haunting of Connecticut and then getting to be in Scream. And like that's a cool thing that both of them, like while he was in the movie franchise, she was in the TV franchise, like that's a cool thing that both of them have going for them in the realm of horror. But like he's somebody who's been in tons of horror movies. He was in Smile, he'll be in Smile 2 probably for a short period of time based on how the last movie ended. But like you see him pop up in all these different places. And the thing that I love the most about Gallner is that he has this unbelievable ability to just flip flop from hero to villain. And that doesn't happen with a lot of actors, but he is someone, and specifically in the horror realm, where he can play the hero lead or the villain lead. And what he's given here really allows him to cook, man. Like he is devilishly delightful at times. And just the fear that he is able to instill at times for both the audience and for Fitzgerald is wonderful. But when you get these intimate moments between the two of them, like I said, the chemistry that's going on with them and how he responds to her, like just creates these fascinating moments. And it's one of those things where in the rewatchability, you really get to feel a lot more and take a lot more away from the performance and see how these things are being done in different ways. That's really, really cool. Like Mollner really does set this thing up to just constantly be revealing more things to you and putting you in scenarios where you take more away from it with each watch. And Gallner is one of those people where like you go back and you watch his performance more than once, the things he's doing are just tremendous, and how he's able to just bring what he can offer to the table and do it at such a high level that works perfectly in what Mollner is building. Like he is someone that puts you on the edge of your seat and someone that you are constantly going, man, where is this going to go? If this is happening, how is that character going to respond to that when we go back? And how did we get to these places? And the two of them are just absolutely phenomenal, the whole movie. And then there is a decent supporting cast here. You don't get a ton, but Barbara Hershey and Ed Begley Jr. do pop up for one sequence that's absolutely tremendous. And it's one of those things where their characters are characters that you kind of immediately have questions about because they have one of the most interesting breakfast scenarios and scenes I've ever seen in my life. And that really plays into some of the dark humor in the movie. And the two of them are just absolutely perfect. And anybody else that really pops up is only in the movie for a brief period of time. It really does rest on the shoulders of Fitzgerald and Gallner. And that's something that I think JT Mollner builds that just works wonderfully for the movie and is something that I think is extremely beneficial because of the two people you have carrying the film. The other aspect of the filmmaking that really pops here for me is how the movie is shot. It's shot in 35 millimeter. It actually says that in the lead up to the movie, like as the different like text is coming up on the screen, they're like shot completely in 35 millimeter. And that's because first time cinematographer Giovanni Ribisi and director JT Mollner come from an old school perspective, right? Like everything was shot on film back in the day. And Mollner only ever wants to work on film. And that's something that, in talking to Ribisi also kind of had a vibe where he really only wants to work with film. And it does bring so many cool elements. I've always talked about how 35 millimeters kind of like vinyl. There's a different texture, there's a different feel, there's a different visual to actual celluloid film. And in a movie like this, where the color saturation is so important, like there are scenes that are just bathed in blue or bathed in red, and how those individual moments can then impact things in similar color ranges when you're not in those and you're just in regular daylight or you're outside, and how it just saturates things in general really makes certain things in the movie pop. And then what Ribisi does with the camera is tremendous. And one of the things that was interesting to hear Mollner talk about was like the difficulties that film can bring up, because you do some of these sequences that are really long. There's a moment where we follow a character through a house, and it's a very long sequence. And it's one of those where when you're shooting on film, you will eventually run out of film. And you kind of have to re-rack, and they said they'd go back like a minute or two and start shooting, so you kind of lead into the same spot to be able to get a good place to kind of merge the film together. And that obviously can create struggles with what you're doing and your setups and how well everything has to be executed, because you only have so much film. But the flip side of that, something else Mollner talked about, and Ribisi as well, is that it creates this sense of urgency where every time you're yelling action, everything matters, because you only have so much film. Where on the digital age, you could shoot a take, I think we could tweak this and this, let's do it again. Oh, now the actor thinks, well, let me tweak this and this. Okay, let's do it again. You could do 35, 40 takes, where that's a lot harder to do with film, and specifically on a low budget indie film. And you feel that energy coursing through the film the whole time. I think that's the other thing that really makes the movie pop, is that you feel this urgency, and everything matters, and every decision matters. And that living on screen and in camera adds to what's going on. And a lot of that comes from how Ribisi is shooting the film and how Mollner is setting it up. And then when you look at the other things in the movie, specifically the scoring, composer Craig DeLeon, wow, like you want to talk about like how the thrilling aspects of this movie hit so hard because of the way Mollner structured it and the performances. The scoring, dude, the way he is able to bring in these just harsh strings or harsh keys at certain moments that just immediately make you go, uh-oh, like something bad is happening. Like they found the perfect tone that every time you hear it, you're like, oh, here comes trouble. And it is something that just strikes you to your core and immediately gets the hair on your arms to stand up and puts you in a spot where you're just like, oh my goodness. Like it's such a specific sound too. Like it's one of those scores that when you hear it, if you were to hear it out in the wild, you would get snapped right to a specific place in time. And that's something that I love from scoring. But the other thing that's really cool here is that Mollner developed a relationship and a friendship with American musician Z Berg. He had heard a song of hers and wanted to use it in the movie, reached out to her, and she said, well, hey, why don't I just do the whole soundtrack? And then they've kind of developed this friendship. And listen to him talk about it, you can tell they're two creatives, even though they're coming from different spaces, that vibe and connect. And when you watch this movie, it was so beneficial to have that sound course through the whole movie. I think there's only one song where Fitzgerald turns the radio on that's not from Z Berg, but any other needle drops in the movie all come from her. And like I said, whatever song he wanted to use had a tone to it that she was able to replicate, and then was able to put lyrics and words that really help drive certain story elements. Like it's one of those, I haven't had a chance to listen to the entire soundtrack, but where those needle drops fall throughout the course of the movie helps just generate this counterbalance to the eerie, intense tones that you're getting in the score, to this much more kind of mellow indie rock vibe where, I don't know, they just complement each other so well and do this wonderful job of creating something that just keeps you on your toes, keeps you uncomfortable, and creates a little bit of an eerie mood that fits perfectly for this movie. Because this is a film that, it's a suspense thriller to a T, but it has hardcore horror elements to it. And when those horror elements are being executed, the music is usually something that is really contributing to that. And across the board, like everybody that shows up for this movie does absolutely phenomenal things across the board. And when you have that many people contributing at that high a level, it really does come down to the story and whether or not it's going to work. And like I said, I think what Mollner crafted, both in structure and what's actually on the page, is something that takes you to a place that you've been before. You know, we're following a serial killer on a killing spree, but delivers it in a way that you haven't seen and plays with certain themes in ways that you haven't seen played before. And it just gives this movie, while it has vibes that feel like Tarantino, or you can see where some of the influences come from in film, it's its own thing the whole time. And any time a genre film can feel that unique and original, you've knocked it out of the freaking ballpark. And I think that's something that JT Milner and Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner and Giovanni Ribisi in particular all do. Z Berg, you know, Craig DeLeon, like all of these people are just bringing things to this movie that like amplify it so much. And yeah, this is an absolute home run. If you have somehow not seen the movie and listened to this entire review, this is a must go see it movie. It sucks that it was only released in a handful of theaters. I think it was like 1,100 theaters for the initial launch. Maybe they're starting to add some theaters on the end of its run, but looks like it's gonna be out of theaters by the time we get to this weekend, which kind of blows. But when it gets to streaming, if you haven't seen it, this is something that needs to be on the top of your list because Strange Darling is absolutely phenomenal. So let's get the C Maniacs up, give this one a score. Like I said, I think what Mollner does, both from a structure standpoint and from a just general writing standpoint, like his dialogue is so strong and how everything doesn't just elevate the story we're getting on the screen, but also the thematical elements and things that Mollner wants to talk about, like how is able to just highlight and hammer all those home with imagery that just keeps you on the edge of your seat and constantly makes you go, wow, is just a joy to watch as a fan and as an audience member. And then when you look at like what Giovanni Ribisi is doing and the 35 millimeter and the color saturation and just how they dial certain things up and set up different sequences, and just some of the camera work is just so spectacular, and how everything complements each other, right? Like you get the structure and the story and the score, and then the you know, Z Berg's you know, needle drops, and like I said, DeLeon's scoring, and then these performances from Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner that are just absolutely spectacular and so specific to what Mollner is looking for, that it creates versatility in the rewatchability of the movie. And all of these things go hand in hand. And if you want a home run, that's what has to happen. Everything has to go hand in hand and has to be helping and serving each other. And this is one of those movies where it just felt like everything was serving JT Mollner's vision, and his vision was spectacular. 4.5 out of 5 C Maniacs for the C Man. This is one of my top 10 favorite movies of the entire year right now. That is a spoiler for what's coming at the end of the year when we do our rankings, but right now this is in my top 10. I don't see it leaving. This is a tremendous movie, and I'm finding more and more, while horror in general has been strong in 2024, the suspense thriller is really alive and thriving, and this is one of the best suspense thrillers you're going to see all year. Heck, this is one of my favorite suspense thrillers from the last few years. It's not often that you get something that's that effective inside of genre, but also that unique in the way it's delivered, even though you can feel vibes of inspiration from other places. Mollner really turned in a hell of a magic trick, and I was just so happy to get to see this early and get to see him and Fitzgerald and Ribisi talk about the movie. And I'm excited that the movie may be creating some other opportunities for content. But yeah, all around, this one's an absolute home run. Go see it if you have the ability to before the week is out. And if not, make sure it's on your list for when it hits streaming. I haven't seen a date yet, but when it gets there, this is a must watch. I'm shutting up because already I have been running too long. It's like I'm so good at these 1-minuters, and then when I get to talk full, I'm like, I can't help but going over 20. But that's all right. I appreciate y'all being with me, and now it's your turn. I want to hear from you guys. If you had the chance and opportunity to see Strange Darling, what did you think? Did it have as much of an impact on you as it did me? It's one of those where talking to people, some people that have seen it that I've talked to feel very much the way I feel. But then there are other thrillers where I felt similarly and other people felt completely different. So where do you land? Did you love this? Did you not love it? Was it mid? If you haven't seen it, is it on your list? How did you hear about it? If you listened to this whole, review, did this excite you? Does it make you want to see it? Did I spoil too much? Anything you got without spoilers. Keep it spoiler free, because like I said, I think going into this movie as blind as possible and knowing as little as possible, which is why I tried to just talk about the technical and not so much what was actually in the story. But the less you know, the better. So let me know if that impacts you, how that falls for you, where you're thinking, good, bad, indifferent, on Strange Darling. Put it down below in the comment section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions, we're back. We're cranking on content, and hopefully stuff will be flowing over the next few weeks. You want to be here for all of that. You want to be here as we talk about old things, new things. You dig the vibe. You want to show a little love and support. Come join C-Maniac Nation. Super easy. Jump over there. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Hey, what's up, C-Maniac Nation? Winter Ken here, where we grow out our roots and our beard, letting you know that you can see some new C-Man videos right up here and right down here. And if you want all those videos and show that man a little love and support, come join C-Maniac Nation right over there, and the C-Man will catch you on the next one.